Hola, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today we are making 3 super delicious, super healthy breakfast treats, all Mediterranean diet, of course. I love Mediterranean diet breakfast. It's a way to eat a delicious treat with your coffee. It's never something really big, it's something small, sweet, delicious, made with such wholesome ingredients. So let's hop into the first recipe. For the first recipe, we are making some super delicious, fudgy, rich, thick and chewy, double chocolate Seedy breakfast cookies. I think that's what I'm calling them. I'm not sure yet. So these cookies are insanely simple to make. We're gonna start off with the wet ingredients. So we're gonna combine olive oil because, as you guys know, it's my favorite Mediterranean fat to use. Some people ask if you can taste, because I have another cookie recipe with olive oil and they asked if you can taste the olive oil. Can't really taste it too much. It just kind of complements everything in kind of a fruity way. And then I'm going in with the sugar. So I am using coconut sugar today. You could use white sugar, brown sugar, stevia if you'd rather do that, any kind of granulated sugar. Granulated sugar is kind of important for the texture of these cookies. So just stir those two together. At the end of the day, sugar is sugar. They're kind of all the same. It just depends on taste preferences, on, you know, if you're high glycemic, low glycemic, that sort of thing. To the lovely mixture we have so far of just the olive oil and the coconut sugar, we're going to add in the other wet ingredients. So I am using some vanilla extract here, about, maybe you can see it, maybe you can't. I'm just gonna go ahead and pour it in, I guess, trying to tilt it to show you. Some vanilla extract, oh, that was a mess. And about 1/4 cup of super runny tahini. So I am using the tahini here for a couple of reasons. It adds some thickness and some chewiness to the batter. I'm also claiming to the title that it's a seed, so tahini is made out of sesame seeds. You could sub with, you know, sunflower butter, almond butter, peanut butter, but you need that kind of runny consistency, so try to use either the top of the jar of a super natural brand, if that makes any sense, so you can get that runny texture of the nut butters. So I'm just gonna give that a quick stir. Now for the next wet ingredient. This will be the last wet ingredient. These are eggs. So the secret to my cookies. So fun fact, I am kind of like the queen of healthy cookies. Like in high school and college, that was when sorry, I'm trying not to scratch my nails by breaking these eggs. So I'm like being very careful here. Anyways, I'm all over the place here. So when I was in high school and when I was living home and at college, I was like the queen of healthy cookie baking because my mom has an obsession with cookies. Like she could eat them breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and she always begged me to make her healthy ones so she wouldn't feel as guilty. I just developed a bunch of different recipes for healthy cookies. And so yeah, and then also my girlfriend from college texts me all the time and she's like, I miss Caroline's cookies, because she was also kind of a health nut like me, and so she loved that I made healthier style cookies. So I separated the yolk from the white. So I put the white mixture in here, set it off to the side, can throw it in my eggs in the morning or something. And that's super important in my opinion. If you're using eggs, you can sub out flax eggs if you are vegan, but it's just super important to use the yolk in my opinion, because that's what helps make a dense and chewy fudgy cookie, is just that one yolk. That's one of my very many cookie hacks I've learned over the years. So I have the wet mixture entirely done. I'm gonna set that off to the side. A little switch of the bowls here and start with the dry ingredients. So I'm using 1.5 cups of oat flour here, to keep this gluten-free. Oat flour is probably one of my most favorite gluten-free flours to bake with because it really kind of is similar to all-purpose flour. As similar as it can get, kind of keeping it super natural, not using like xanthan gum and all these other little gums and additives. I love the texture of oat flour and what it gives and how sturdy it is. Like almond flour is a little bit more fatty, so it kind of can make a baked good very greasy. It's also kind of gritty. So oat flour just does very well. And then the other gluten-free flour that I love dearly is buckwheat. If you're not gluten-free, but you want something super healthy, you know, whole wheat flour, whole wheat pastry flour. The difference between whole wheat flour and whole wheat pastry flour is that pastry flour would be a little bit lighter of a whole wheat. And then if you go 100% whole wheat, it's gonna be a very intense, wheaty cookie taste. Next, with the dry ingredients, we're going with cocoa powder and a little, I don't know if you saw that in there, but there's a little tiny half teaspoon of super fine espresso powder. Ina Garten taught me that, Miss Barefoot Contessa. She claims that, you know, chocolate tastes more chocolatey with a little bit of coffee. You really won't taste it unless you have like hyper taste buds. Like I can taste almost all the ingredients sometimes and things, but for the most part, most people really can't taste that coffee. It's not going to give you any caffeine or anything. Added in all those dry ingredients, and now I'm using a fork. You could use a whisk. I'm just being kind of lazy and using a fork, and just giving this a quick little stir before adding in the final dry ingredients, which is salt, baking soda, and baking powder. All essential in baking. Make sure everything is evenly distributed. All right, the dry ingredients are all stirred together nice and evenly. So the dry ingredients are gonna go into the wet. I'm gonna put in about a third of the mixture, a fourth to a third of the mixture at a time, just to make sure that we're getting it evenly worked in. Absolutely love cookies for breakfast. I love something to go with my coffee. That is a very Mediterranean diet thing, is to have a smaller breakfast. Almost 95% of the time it's something sweet, and then, you know, you really spend the time and the energy of cooking a really delicious lunch and dinner. But it's supposed to be quick and easy and just grab it and go. So they always kind of have something sweet because they want something to go. The Mediterranean lifestyle kind of has something to go with the coffee in the morning or tea or whatever it is that you're having. When I've traveled with my friends to Italy, and I've actually seen like responses of this on social media, they're just like, they eat cake for breakfast, they eat cookies for breakfast, like, holy moly, that's so much sugar, oh my gosh. Fun fact though, when I'm in America and I compare the cookies I grew up eating with milk and then switched to coffee in Italy versus all the cookies, name any cookie in America, they're completely different. The cookies that I've experienced of the Mediterranean lifestyle breakfast, especially in Italy, is the cookies are insanely borderline savory. Like not savory, but borderline just zero sweetness. Like for example, my grandmother eats like integrale, or excuse me, like whole wheat cookies, something similar to this, where there's just like barely any sugar. So at the end of the day, even though they are eating like cookies for breakfast and cake for breakfast and things like that, they use such high quality ingredients, and they also definitely they're not nearly as sweet as what we're used to in America. So they're actually, let me get every last drop of that. They're actually quite healthy, very well balanced. If you look at the Mediterranean lifestyle, they eat dinner very late. I mean, depending on where you are, Italy, 8 o'clock is, I would say, the average hour to eat dinner. In Spain, I'm pretty sure it's like 9 p.m. or 10 p.m., not 10, maybe 10. They eat dinner very late in the Mediterranean lifestyle. So when you think about that, you know, you go to bed very full, you wake up probably still pretty full. They're not like starving and hungry in the morning. They kind of just need a bolt of energy to get going. So they need their espresso, they need a little bit of sugar, and then, you know, worry about a mid-morning snack. Then there's lunch, then there's another snack, and then there's dinner. You know, again, I'm not trying to generalize. I'm not trying to say everyone does this. Of course not. But that's what I've watched and learned while living and being in Italy. So as you can see, the chocolatey, gooey batter is coming together. I'm going to stir in the mix-ins. Pause my little Mediterranean breakfast rant on sugary stuff. So the mix-ins. Oats, rolled oats. We're going in with 1/4 cup of, these are pumpkin seeds. For the mix-ins of either, either chocolate, some dark chocolate would be delicious, or some dried fruit, so dried cherries, dried dates. Kind of look for the dried fruit that isn't coated in sugar, like cranberries. Cranberries are not my favorite dried fruit because they're full of sugar. These are actually from Hue Chocolate. They're like sour golden berries or something. They taste very similar to like sour dried cherries covered in chocolate. So this is a double whammy for me because it's both dried fruit and chocolate. So you can use 1/2 cup of dried fruit, 1/2 cup of chocolate, 1/4 cup of each, whatever you want your mix-ins to be. And then we're using a tablespoon each of 4 different seeds. So we have hemp seeds, chia seeds, poppy seeds, and sesame seeds. I'm delivering on the Seedy name, okay? So going to lightly fold this in. So it is now time to scoop the cookies. I'm just laying these out on a tray as if I was going to bake them, but I'm actually gonna just pop them in the fridge. You can throw a little bit of saran wrap over them or something, put them in a container with a lid, and just make sure that they do chill because they're very greasy. like the grease is already coming off on my hand. And so that way, if we popped these into the oven right now, they would just get all really crispy and thin and just not the texture I want, or you probably want. So I'm going to just continue cranking these out on the cookie tray, throw them in the fridge, and then we'll bake them off and do a little taste test. Fresh from the oven, about to slide off the tray. These cookies smell unreal. They're super thick and fudgy, very dense, very seedy, very delicious. Not too sweet at all. The perfect amount of sweetness for an enjoyable breakfast, if you know what I mean. They're gooey, they're chocolatey. I added a few chocolate chips on top for the gooey, chocolatey, melty perfection effect. But I love how much texture you get from the seeds as you crunch. As you can see, they're kind of squishy and fudgy, and I love a super fudgy cookie. I can barely taste the espresso because I'm kind of looking for it because I love espresso and chocolate. These cookies are amazing. I'm getting chocolate all over me, obviously, by my outfit and makeup and everything. I waited like 2 or 3 days to bake these off because I had so many other breakfast treats, as you're about to see, already made, so I needed to eat those. So just now baked these off and they're the bomb. Anyways, I'm gonna finish this delicious cookie and we're gonna make the next breakfast recipe. Next breakfast recipe, we are going to make some ciambelle, basically banana bread, cinnamon sugar donuts. So I have a huge love for banana bread. I really don't know many people who don't love banana bread. And I know what you're thinking, these aren't bananas anymore, Caroline, they're completely black. They've been in my fridge for way too long, but they're totally and completely 100% still salvageable. But of course, the most ideal time to use the bananas is when they are kind of speckled, very heavily speckled. Start mashing away with a big fork, or you could also use kind of like a potato masher if you have one of those. So I am making these donuts because inspired by them for 2 reasons. One is because my favorite kind of breakfast, special breakfast in Italy is ciambelle, which is a sugar donut. I made a lot when I was growing up, and I would make them with my grandma or relatives. You'd roll them out, make a little circle, fry them, toss them in sugar. They taste pretty plain, I'm not gonna lie. They're a pretty plain donut, but sugar coating the donut aspect, it just is a little bit nostalgic for me. Also, my current obsession at my favorite coffee place here in Arizona is a cinnamon sugar kind of croissant muffin, so a cruffin. So it's kind of a cruffin with that cinnamon sugar coating. So I love banana bread, I love donuts, and I love cinnamon sugar. And to the mashed up bananas, this is the wet mixture, I'm gonna add 2 eggs. While I'm mixing the eggs into the bananas, I'm gonna add in some coconut sugar. Last 2 wet ingredients, I'm going in with a 1/3 cup of melted delicious butter and some vanilla extract to bring out even more of those dessert flavors. Okay, so the wet mixture is done. We're going to work on the dry mixture, which is 1 cup almond flour and 1 cup of oat flour. So I love the mixture of the two because the almond flour gives kind of a nutty texture to it, and the oat flour gives it that sturdy, almost like all-purpose flour feel. To the flours, I'm going to be adding in baking soda, baking powder, salt, and some cinnamon. Stir these together. This banana bread recipe, banana donut recipe, is also perfect as a regular loaf of banana bread. It is also dry, goes into the wet. I'm gonna do maybe like half at a time just to make sure we get everything well mixed in. So like I was saying, this is so amazing as donuts, but you could also make this banana bread recipe, banana donut recipe as banana bread, as banana cake. Stir in the other half of the flour mixture. I'm going to switch to a rubber spatula to make sure that I can get all of the flour off the bottom of the bowl, and the batter is ready. So I have a little bit of butter here, and I'm kind of just rip off the paper of some leftover butter and grease all around the interior of these donut pans. So with a spoon, I feel like that's kind of the easiest way. You kind of just take the batter and lightly add it into the donut molds. You don't want it coming up too high up on the center of the donut molds because that'll cause a little bit of burning. So I'm just going to fill all of these donut molds and pop them into the oven. The oven is preheated at 350 And they should, because they're such a small thing, they should only take about 20 minutes or so to bake. 20-30 minutes, depends on your oven. The donuts didn't stick. I'm so excited. They came out beautifully, perfectly. It is time. They're still slightly warm, just popped them out of the oven. So I'm going to take them while they're still pretty warm, give them about like 10 minutes to cool down a little bit so you can handle them. I have a plate of butter and I'm going to just roll it in the butter on all sides, just like that. It's okay if it gets a little crumbly. Oops. And then I'm gonna stir together, which I did not do in advance. I was going to before I started filming, and then I forgot. Some cinnamon sugar. So like about a tablespoon of sugar to about 2 to 3 tablespoons, no, about a tablespoon of cinnamon to about 2 to 3 tablespoons of sugar is one of my favorite ratios. And then just take it with all the butter, just pat it in the butter, just like that. And you get a nice cinnamon sugar donut. Now, the really like decadent way to do this would be to double coat it, but I think this is good. And that's the perfect donut. So I'm gonna do a few more, and you wanna do it warm so it really soaks up the butter and soaks up the cinnamon sugar. Oh my God, these look amazing. I have prepared myself a nice iced coffee. Oh, mamma mia. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. I would show you guys the donut, but like I'm gonna get all the cinnamon sugar everywhere. These donuts are so delicious. You have to try just the banana bread alone. Just try the banana bread recipe. It's such a staple recipe for me. It just always turns out delicious. And then the crunchy cinnamon sugar. I mean, this is a breakfast win. Total breakfast win. If you want to do something different, like ice it with like a Greek yogurt icing, or do something maybe a little bit less sugary, totally understand. But if you want something decadent that you could also eat every single day, these donuts are incredible. Okay, love this recipe. You must try. Let's move on to the last breakfast recipe. Third and final breakfast recipe, we are going to be making scones. And of course, my version of scones, because I have to make some kind of Caroline version, is going to be a fig ricotta scone. So we're starting off with oat flour, 2.5 cups, and I'm going to stir in 1 tablespoon, which is a lot, of baking powder, some baking soda, about a half teaspoon, and some salt. So that is going to be our dry ingredients. We're just gonna kind of, you can use a whisk or a fork here, make sure that it's all sifted and really well combined, all those ingredients, because we want a lot of rise. We want a puffy, buttery, flaky scone. And now I'm going in with a little bit of sweetener, so about 1/4 cup of sugar going in. We have the dry ingredients all mixed together. This is seriously such a simple recipe. I'm gonna go in with 1 egg. And it should be cold. So most of the time when I talk about baking, I'm like, everything should be at room temperature. Today, with this type of recipe, we want everything seriously as cold as possible. So the egg is just out of the fridge. I'm gonna go ahead and stir it all up. Okay, so we have 1 beaten egg ready to go for the kind of liquidy, milky mixture, because in scones, typically you'd see some type of milk or buttermilk, sometimes even like Greek yogurt or some type of creamy goodness added to scones. Like I said, I'm using 1/2 cup of ricotta. The next ingredient that is absolutely crucial to scones is butter. So I'm gonna grab it out of the freezer. So I have some beautiful Irish organic butter here, my favorite. You wanna use super high quality butter for this recipe, because that butter is what makes a difference. It's such an important ingredient, so use the good stuff. So I have 1/2 cup here, and I'm gonna use a method that I've never used before, pulled it out of the freezer. I'm gonna go ahead and grate it, because we want, like I said, we wanna keep everything as cold as possible. So to avoid overworking it, to avoid making the butter too soft, I am grating it, and it's looking like cheese. Okay, so the butter cheese going straight into the flour mixture. So you could use a pastry cutter as well, and make sure that we get that butter all stirred in to the flour really lightly. You don't want to kind of push all the butter together. You want to keep separating it like the little cheese strings. Keep separating it and stirring it in to the flour mixture. Next, into the batter, we're gonna add the wet ingredients. So I'm gonna go in with the beaten egg, as well as the ricotta, And to avoid the heat of my hand, because we've done a really good job getting the butter evenly distributed, I'm gonna go in with this rubber spatula and kind of just do a folding motion. Don't work it too hard, just ever so lightly. Keep stirring until the mixture comes together. So the dough is about 70%, almost completely one good mixture, one very packable kind of dough mixture. It's about 70% there. I don't want to overwork it, so I'm going to add in the last two ingredients. So this is cardamom. You could use cinnamon, allspice, ginger. Ginger would actually be delicious. I didn't think about that. But any spice that you think you love, that you would want to pair, just to add a more depth of flavor, because the ingredients we're working with don't have a ton of flavor. I really should have added the cardamom to the dry mixture, but I forgot. For our last ingredient, it is finally fig season. My favorite fruit in the world, my favorite season, time of year. Figs are here and I'm so happy. I'm not gonna lie though, I got these mid-June, was when I'm kind of filming this. Personally, I don't think figs are really ready till July. That's what I've noticed in America. It's different in Italy, but anyways, the best figs in my opinion are the black mission figs, and they should be super red and delicious on the inside. So I am just cubing these up into tiny little bite-sized pieces, because we want them pretty well mixed throughout, like the size of, you know, maybe a chocolate chip, honestly. Once again, I'm so sorry there was an issue with my audio. It just stopped recording for some reason. I'm so sorry. So basically, threw all the figs into the bowl, and then I kind of went in with my hands, scooping from underneath and folding and just kind of making sure the dough comes all together ever so lightly. So I have the dough ball and it's ready to go and be rolled out. Kind of form it into a nice circle. We need to work super quickly because at this point the butter has gotten quite soft, and so we're going to roll it out into the shapes and then refrigerate it for another 30 minutes so that butter can get nice and hard and these can stay nice and flaky. All right, so I'm just sprinkling a bunch of extra flour onto the top because we don't want any sticking, and I'm just going to go in and lightly roll. This is a very, very, very rustic pastry. It's not supposed to be perfect, so that's why it's perfect for Caroline to make, because she's not a perfectionist. I love it. So you just kind of want to keep rolling it lightly until about an inch thick. That's like the perfect scone thickness. Okay, perfect. You may have a perfect circle. You kind of can cut diamonds out of the circle, kind of pizza-like. That is super traditional for scones. I'm gonna go get some cookie cutters. So I have some cookie cutters here. I'm just going to make little tiny scones, I guess, because that's kind of fun. I cut out the scone batter into these adorable little flowers. So I'm gonna go in and make these nice and glossy on top with a little bit of egg wash. So it's just really beaten up egg thinned out with water or milk or kind of any liquid just to thin it out. And so I'm just gonna kind of lightly brush the egg wash all over the top of the scones, so they get a nice, super shiny, delicious looking top. Now that I have the egg wash all over, I'm going to do an ever so lightly sprinkle of sugar, just a little bit. Barely adds any sweetness to these scones, but what it does, it adds like a crispy crust on the top, which you guys know I'm the queen of texture. I love, love, love texture. So any way to add in more texture, I love it. For an even better texture, you could use like raw sugar, cane sugar, where it's nice and big. It'd be delicious. I'm gonna pop the scones into the oven at 350 for about 20 minutes until they rise, they're golden, and just pure perfection. Alrighty, so several days later, I'm actually now just showing you guys my taste test, my review of these amazing, delicious fig scones. I actually put half of the dough into the freezer, and so these are the ones that I pulled out of the freezer today. I baked them off so I could finally taste test them for you. I ate all through the flower shaped ones. I ate them every day for breakfast this past week. They were so amazing. But the whole dough in general, what happened was I rolled it way too thin, even though I said don't roll it thinner than an inch. I rolled it about a half an inch. As you can see, I doubled up the dough. There's kind of an awkward like line in between them because I added them to each other to bake, to show you like this is how they're supposed to look. They're supposed to be like this tall. That's how like normal scones are. So The recipe worked out. What I'm trying to get at is this is actually a good recipe. They are real scones. I just rolled the flour ones way too thin that they looked kind of like a cookie, but I promise they're not like cookies, they're like actual scones. I wanted to show you guys this version of what they would have really looked like had I paid attention and actually rolled them out to an inch and not a half an inch thick. Logistics, baking. But anyways, let's do a little taste test. Ignore my broken nail. All right, so that is the inside, nice and flaky. It's full of flavor. Oh my gosh, I love this recipe so much. So to go with the scones last minute, I made a little bit of this kind of honey butter. Smear some on the scones, just like that. Now for a little taste test with the honey butter. These are hitting the spot. They're so good. You have to try these scones. They're absolutely delicious. Let me just close out the video here. I hope you enjoyed these 3 amazing breakfast recipes. So easy to bake, so easy to prep in advance. I enjoy reading your comments so much, and I just wanted to say once again, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, if you got any value, are excited to make any of these recipes, please hit the thumbs up button and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you can know when I upload and watch as soon as I do, and support me because it means the absolute world to me. Thank you so much again. I hope you create a very zestful day. Ciao.